welcome back to Liquid Lunch. I'm Mark Pezzelato, and you're also listening to Pezmosis Music Radio, episode number 29. This is a simulcast, and we have a special guest for you. It's Hugh Reilly, and Hugh is the founder of ThatChannel.com, but he's also a great human being, and he's a musician, very talented, and normally you see him sitting here in this chair, but we have the pleasure today of getting to know him a little bit more, so it's a special broadcast, and for those of you watching, and normally watching Liquid Lunch, you probably don't know a lot about Hugh because he likes to talk about other people because he's a very kind-hearted man, but today we're going to go more into his career. Thanks for giving us this opportunity.
This is amazing, Mark. I totally forgot we were going to do this, so you're really going to get the spontaneous thing from me today.
Well, spontaneous, I mean, is your life, so. This is your life, Hugh Reilly.
There is some degree of spontaneity there, yeah.
So, what got you into music?
Music. I started, I was in grade 5 when, totally out of the blue, the principal came up to me and said that I was selected to be in some special music program because there was no, where I was, I got to pick an instrument and learn an instrument, and I picked the cello. I didn't even know what a cello was.
How old were you?
But I had to pick an instrument. I was in grade 5. So the guy beside me picked cello. So I said, okay, cello. And I learned how to play cello starting in grade 5. That was my first. When I was a little kid, though, I liked playing the piano, but we didn't have a piano, so I never had any music lessons prior to that. And then in high school, I played the trumpet, as I was just telling Sophia. And I think I watched the Grammy Awards one day, and I thought, oh, I would like to be a rock star. That looks like fun. So
You wanted to be a performer or win a Grammy?
It's a good. I think I was just in it for the, probably for the
fame.
For the fame, yes. For the fame, yeah, probably mostly for the fame and the. All the good things that go with that.
So have you gotten the fame and notoriety that you were seeking for from the age of 13?
Well,
Absolutely.
I would... What?
Absolutely.
I would say not through music. Though the music thing hasn't really worked out.
What do you mean not through music? Explain.
Well, probably if anything's happening on the fame front, it's probably through this show more than... But in a way, this is also... Doing this here at that channel is sort of grew out of the music impulse, the impulse to do music. But I have to say, though, that even though, that might have been one of the drivers to get into music, I really enjoyed playing music, and I think I am pretty good at music in terms of playing, in terms of the ability to pick things up easily. Because, like today, I play... In high school, I figured I can't be a rock star and play the trumpet, right? I need a different instrument. So I was always fascinated with electronics and synthesizers. So like from my first summer job, I went out and bought a synthesizer, and I taught myself how to play the keyboards from ear, by ear. So I had the training, learning like the cello and the trumpet, learning the theory and learning to read music, but the keyboard I taught myself to play by ear. And then when my band needed a bass player, I went out and bought a bass guitar and taught myself how to play by ear.
So you just learn music as need be.
Yep.
What brought upon that channel, ThatChannel.com?
Actually, you know what? One of the reasons Natalie said fame as being one of the drivers for music. But one of the things that truly drove me growing up was that I recognized from a very early age that there was a lot of problems in the world. Problems like pollution, overpopulation, the discrepancy between rich and poor nations, rich and poor people, any of the war, nuclear disasters, like these kind of problems are real threats to our civilization and to people on the planet. So I recognized that there was a lot of problems like that from a very early age, and was probably thinking, how do you deal with these problems? right? So one of the drivers in terms of getting involved in music was I thought that, okay, here's a platform upon which one can have a little bit of leverage in terms of being able to make a difference and try to help people or organize people to deal with some of these problems that we face, you know, as a culture, as a planet. So that same impulse, in fact, trying to, I had a band called, it was called Groovy Tuesday. This was in the late 80s, early 90s. And I was trying to, you know, I learned from, I was trying to meld the idea of a musical group with the idea of a social movement of some kind. So I was playing, our band was playing at the Alma Combo one night, and a guy came in who had seen one of our previous shows. And here, this was a guy, he had long hair, kind of looked like Jesus.
He had a beard too?
He had a beard. Yeah, he had the total look. He had a long white gown.
Yeah. Did he have sandals? Was he wearing sandals?
He probably was. If it was the summertime, he probably was wearing sandals. And his name was Groovy. Well, I think his name became known as Groovy Steve. Steve was his name. And Steve and I got talking. Steve was kind of the center of a community of young, what I would call neo-hippies. This would have been in the early 90s. And Steve and I got together that night at the Alma Combo. He recognized our band name from a previous gig that he had seen us, and we put our heads together, and we saw a common ground in terms of, you know, let's try to do something to make the world a better place, right? So we got talking, and we ended up having several meetings with these young people, these neo-hippie young people, and we came up with essentially what was 12 points. You know, what if we were to create a community, we came up with 12 points that would be the sort of the defining principles of what this community would be, what kind of community would be. And this became a pamphlet called Towards a Groovy Community. So the Groovy was sort of a reference to this group of young people who became known as the Groovy Community. And that's why Steve kind of got the name of Groovy Steve. And our band was called Groovy Tuesday. And it was this whole groovy movement in the early 90s. And then that, out of that informal gathering of people, a newspaper got created called Transforum. And
I have an issue of that.
You do? Yeah, because I still have some of the old issues. And Transforum, as a publication, didn't really have much of a business model to it. I have a business degree. But the impulse to create this newspaper was not necessarily a business to make money. It was to have a positive social impact. This was in the early 90s. And through the process of doing this publication, and then do it as a business, because it needs to be sustainable, right? At some point during that process, we actually created a pirate radio station. We managed to get our hands on a transmitter, 99.1 FM that the CBC now has. We were broadcasting on that frequency. And of course, it was totally illegal, and we ended up getting shut down by Industry Canada. But
is that all that happened? They just kind of like...
Yeah, two gentlemen came a knocking. In the U.S., they would have sent a SWAT team, but they just sent a couple of guys by, and they introduced and identified themselves and asked me to unplug the transmitter, and I did. And I said, anyways, it's a long story. If they would have had to come back a second time, they would have charged me with whatever the offense was. But
so after this pirate radio station, you got into ThatChannel.com?
Well, the pirate radio station was 1995, and it was way more fun than publishing. Doing electronic media in that sense was more fun than, which you know, if you're doing a radio show, you know how much fun it is. It was just a lot more fun. It was more immediate than than publishing. So from 1995, I was after we got shut down by Industry Canada, I was strategizing how do we do this as a sustainable venture using the internet, because you can go the get a radio station, TV station route, but it's very expensive in terms of the licensing requirements and also limits. There really aren't any frequencies available in Toronto because they're all taken up, right? So it's expensive, and it's in some markets impossible. So, but I saw that the internet, which was emerging, was going to be a medium that was going to allow this kind of electronic streaming media to take place. So from '95, I was strategizing on how to do this as a sustainable venture using the internet. And it took 9 years, because we turned what is now ThatChannel, we turned it on in 2004. But literally for those 9 years, most of my mental energy was devoted to trying to figure out how to make that happen.
And how did you make that happen? You come up with a plan. I know that because when you are doing music, or you decide to follow your passion, there's a lot of things that happen in terms of what you want to accomplish. You mentioned that when you first got into music that you had, you were watching the Grammys, and you more wanted the fame. But then your passion takes over, and you find something else where you can help people. So how does that contribute to the thought process with ThatChannel.com?
Well, I think Natalie said fame. I think, and then as I was talking about, I remember that it was really to have to make the difference and use that fame as leverage to try to make a positive effect, right? Mm-hmm. Sorry, the question again?
What is the question?
Yeah.
The question is more along the lines, well, how is ThatChannel.com? How are you actually acquiring your goals by having this place? I mean, you say that you mentioned global warming and pollution, and so how is ThatChannel.com and your creation here actually accomplishing your goals?
Well, it's interesting. I mean, even if you've got a little bit of fame, like Bono, for example. I mean, there's a guy who's got, probably
a little bit of fame.
Well, he's probably one of the biggest rock stars on the planet, and he's always, you see him always going around trying to have an effect. Or you see Bob Geldof doing those concerts to fix the famine in Africa or whatever. But even those guys, with all that fame and all that money, I mean, Africa's still in trouble, so they may have been able to put a Band-Aid on a particular problem in the short run, but to deal with the longer-term problem, like famine, is a question that, it's still an open question. How do we deal with these issues? So, I mean, I'm not sure we have the answers exactly yet, but I would suggest that a couple of ways that we can do it is that, because when I think about this in terms of a business, in terms of streaming media, what we're doing. So one thing we're doing is we're helping people have access to the media that otherwise wouldn't have it. I think, with this internet TV, people can come on here that probably wouldn't get on City TV or the big traditional media that, only very few numbers of people, and often companies with large amounts of money can use that kind of media to communicate, to get their word out, right? So that leaves everybody else as simply consumers of media rather than being involved in the conversation that's a two-way communication. So the internet itself, as a phenomenon that's emerged in the last 20 years, is amazing in the sense that the natural way people communicate on the internet is conversational, in that it's back and forth, two-way. It puts everybody back on an equal platform again. So I believe that and with the emergence of things like Facebook and social networking, well, this is a whole new way for people to relate to one another. I kind of joke sometimes that the problems of the world will be solved. It's going to be a Facebook app. Somebody's going to come up with a Facebook app that's going to deal with that. but I'm only half joking about it, because I think that the potential of using the internet as a very egalitarian conversational medium is provides a context that people can develop applications or systems that are going to allow people to take the power back into their own hands, to create new forms of governance that are can effectively and replace the formal political structures that I think a lot of people are feeling aren't really serving them.
I'm Mark Pezzelato, joined by Natalie. We're interviewing Hugh Reilly on Pezmosis Music Radio and on ThatChannel.com. This is Liquid Lunch, special broadcast, episode number 29 on Pezmosis Music Radio. And Hugh, let's talk more about the planning aspect. Like, if you're going to have an endeavor like creating a whole TV station online, what do you have to do? What's the planning? What do you start first? How do you go about doing this?
Well, that's a good question, because I started probably planning it in about 95, and it probably took 10 years to get it off the ground.
But you weren't. Were you thinking every single day and working and?
Well, maybe not every single day, but I was like, I had to do my stuff. I had to, work. I had to earn money and stuff like that. But when it's time to sit down and say, okay, now let's get back to the project. Let's get back to the thing that I'm really working on, that I'm passionate about, that I want to create. Right? That's really what I was working on. So, coming up with a plan for that, you just plan. You just think through the process. Okay, what do we need to do to get from where we are to where we want to be? Right? And just thinking through that process, I identified that we needed to do 4 things all at once. We needed to create content. We needed to get an audience. We needed to have revenue. And we needed to have the technology in place. So those 4 things. We needed a strategy on all 4 of those.
So can you briefly touch upon each one of those 4 things and describe how you fulfilled those needs?
Well, when you think about the way that the internet works, internet is a pull environment versus a push environment. So the whole broadcast industry that we grew up with, television, radio, that's all push. So you put anything on that media, people will watch it, because some percentage of the audience that's available will watch anything, even if it's not that good, right? So the whole traditional media thinks in those terms of push. And when the internet came out, and it's a pull environment, the internet is programmed by the user. Nobody's going to watch anything unless they demand it, right? And the traditional media had a big problem wrapping their heads around that whole concept. And in fact, if you remember, there was a big, I think the Globe and Mail and some other big media, they tried to have a push technology on the internet, but it just doesn't work, because that's not how the internet works, right? So we need to first of all recognize that we're in that pull environment, and we have to create content that is of so much value to the users that there will be an audience for it.
Mm-hmm. And there's such a broad audience on the internet. So I guess first you have to find your target audience. Is that what we're going for here? And then decide how to pull them in, or how did you go about doing that?
That's a good question. To tell you the truth, I think, of course, we're all programmed. Anybody who's been to business school is programmed with that whole concept of target market, target audience. I'm not sure that I buy into that concept 100% as we move forward on the internet environment, because sometimes people don't know what they want. Like when you're on Google and you're typing in a search term, when you're doing that, you are getting what you want. But then there's oftentimes when you're going to stumble upon, and I think that's where that social network gets their name. You stumble upon something and you go, wow, that's really cool. You didn't know that you wanted it, but when you saw it, then you realized that you did. So I think we need to think in terms of those are 2 important ways that people get information. 1, they want it. 2, they stumble upon it.
So that was one of them, providing the content. Then there was revenue,
Yeah, an audience. And don't forget, you can make content, but if you're in a pull environment like the internet, if you like this, forget that band, Chilliwack says, if there ain't no audience, there ain't no show, right? So if you create content and there's no audience, it's a waste of time, right? You need both at the same time. In fact, you need all four of those things at the same time. So, so the trick is, now normally a company that would be thinking about doing a venture like this on the internet might have millions of dollars that they can throw at promotion, marketing, so that they can generate that audience. But we were in a position where we didn't have any budget to do that, so it was really challenging to
That's really
figure that out.
interesting. So how do you start a television station with no budget?
Well, the thing was, the real challenge was, and this is where I was sitting around for at least a couple of years, knowing that we had to do four things all at once: generate audience, generate content, generate revenue, and have the technology in place to do that. You got to do it all at once. How do you do it? Well, I didn't really know how to do it. So that's why I was sitting around for 2 years going, gee, how the heck are we going to do this, especially without a budget, right? So what happened was I woke up one day and a little voice in my head said, go and buy a newspaper. So I went and bought a Toronto Star, and I looked in the classified section, and I found an ad. And what the ad was a guy who was looking for somebody to run an internet radio station or do an internet radio show. So I got in contact with this person, and they were sales. They were sales, and he was a sales guy, and he had this concept of putting together an internet radio station and selling advertising to it. So I looked at that and I said, okay, well, if he's doing the sales, that's the revenue. That's the revenue one. That's the revenue strategy. That's one out of those four. And he also had the technology in place. Okay, that's 2 out of 4. Okay, well, that makes my job a lot easier now, right? So I said, okay, so we can generate the content. I also said to him, I said, it's not going to be so easy, because you got to think about where you're going to get your audience, because your advertisers are going to want to know what your numbers are, and what are you going to tell them, right? And because what's your budget? He didn't have a budget for generating that audience either. Anyway, so what I said was that I thought a lot about this, and it's not going to be so simple, and you need to think about this and this and this, but I'm willing to create content, and I'm willing to work with you on generating an audience. And so from this location, we set up an environment where we could create content, tie into his delivery technology, and bingo, then we had 3 out of 4, right? So now we just had to work on the audience.
See, this is really interesting, because you could really sum it up like this. ThatChannel.com came up from a little voice inside your head that said, go pick up a newspaper. And you went there, and the interesting thing was that you knew what you were looking for. You had a focus, you had a drive, you had a mission. It's really important. Have you ever read the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill?
Yep.
You've probably read it a number of times.
I don't know. I can't remember how many times. Yeah.
But the one thing is belief. Now, it seems as though when you were thinking of doing something like ThatChannel.com, was there ever something that said, you know what, Hugh, you can't do this? There's no possible way. I mean, it's 9 years that it took for this to happen. So.
You know what? No, I never thought that. I just didn't think that. I mean, I've always, I think part of it is, I think I may have an irrational belief that anyone can do anything if they really want to. And I just also, part of me is driven. Like, I really do think that this is what I'm here to do. Like, I do feel like me anyway, probably most people, probably are here they have some purpose with their for their life. And I really think that this is part of what I have, what I'm here to do, right? And to me, when I look back at everything, it's kind of, this is really what I've been working on this for my whole life. Really, when it comes right down to it, that's a true statement.
And how do you know? What is that feeling? How do you know you're following your passion?
You know, sometimes it doesn't feel like, sometimes it feels like it's not going to happen. Sometimes it can be very discouraging. And sometimes, you know, I'm tempted to just like throw in the towel and just walk away from it, give up. Like seriously, like often tempted to say, you know what? It's just too difficult. I give up. I'm going to walk away and that's just the way it's going to be. But if I were to do that, I would be giving up on this life. And I'm not ruling it out. because every day is, you know, I mean, you know, it's not happily ever after time by any means.
You know, and I think a lot of people, they have a dream and they want to accomplish something, but then it doesn't happen for them right away, and they wonder why. And a little example, last night I wanted to play the electric guitar. I have a recording studio, Pezmosis Music Productions, and I have an amp and a Stratocaster guitar, and I wanted to play it, so put the guitar on, and there's a process. You have to actually have the patch cord, plug it in, turn it on, and when I turned it on, it wasn't working. It wasn't working right away. And that's when I thought, you know, I could sit here and try to figure out this problem and actually get this guitar to work. And in actuality, it was the patch cord that I had to replace. But I went through a number of troubleshooting steps first. Like, is it the amp? Is it the guitar? What is it? But if you don't go through those troubleshooting steps, you won't get to the goal, which was playing the guitar.
Right.
And then it could have been, oh, geez, you know what? This is not working. Take the guitar, put it down. But that wasn't the case. It's like, okay, I want to do this, and it's going to happen regardless of whether it's working right now or not. And there was just a little bump in the road. And I think that a lot of the times people don't want to experience those bumps in the road. And as soon as there's a hurdle to jump, they just push it away. Would you say that that's the case?
You mean you give up on the goal?
Yeah, or just push it aside, and maybe that's why it takes so long.
Well, I think people probably do that, right? I think that's I think that's life, right? You're going to encounter obstacles, and part of the reason for living for this life is that, you know, we're being tested, and and every time we encounter an obstacle, the act of overcoming it is a huge growth. I mean, that's how we grow, right? That's, you know, solving those problems and expanding our envelope. That's, you know, otherwise we don't grow. So if you give up on your goal, well, you're giving up on growing as a human being.
Yeah, absolutely. You can't stay in one position forever. So let's just close with this. What is the one final thing that you could say to anybody about accomplishing their dreams or following their passion? Mr. Hugh Reilly.
Mr. Reilly.
Boy, we asked Sophia that, and she had a great answer.
I remember what
and
she
she's
said.
12 years old.
She's 12 years old, because I don't know. You know what? It's funny, though. When you ask that question, my first reaction is, I'm not sure I have the answer. I don't know if I have any good advice for people. Because you know, to me, it's still an open question. You know, that this book isn't over. You know, and I'm not there yet, and we're not there yet. You know, and I'm not sure any of us are ever actually there. Like I say, that happily ever after moment. I'm not sure we ever get there.
How is that even possible? You're always living your life. Like you said, you're gaining experience. Right?
Yeah, so I think, and you know, sometimes I'm tempted, as I said, to give up. I think but I haven't given up, right? And I think that's probably, we're probably all going to have to live with that uncertainty forever. But it's our choice. It's our choice. Do we keep going, or do we give up? Right? Are we willing to live with ourselves if we give up? That's the question. And I'm not sure. I don't have a definitive answer to that, right? But so far, I've decided that I can't live with myself if I give up. So
what's in the future for ThatChannel.com?
ThatChannel.com is, I think the vision ultimately is to become, I think we have an understanding of what broadcasting looks like in the totally converged internet environment. So I think we understand it in a way that a lot of the big broadcasters don't, because they're still thinking in that broadcast mindset, that pushed media environment. So we think we understand this environment, and we want to grow this company to be the largest media broadcast, or whatever you want to call it, in this new environment that's emerging. And I think when I look at how the best way to do that is, you really got to think about putting what we're doing now as providing content, as a media provider, providing videos on the internet. I think we need to put that in a context, a larger context that is a social network, because we need to, if people are going to want to see the videos that we're creating, then those videos have to offer a lot of value to the people who are going to watch it. Otherwise, they won't want to watch it. And I think the best way to do that is within a context of a social network. So that's the direction I want to go.
Hugh Reilly is the founder of ThatChannel.com. I am Mark Pezzelato from Pezmosis Music Productions. This has been a simulcast on Pezmosis Music Radio and on ThatChannel.com. This is Liquid Lunch. Also, we have Natalie with us. Hi, Natalie. And thank you for watching and for listening. And Hugh, what's coming up on the program here?
Coming up, we got Ian Kelly. He's in town. He's got a new album called Diamonds in Plastic. Are we going to play some Diamonds in Plastic? And Ian brought his guitar. So we're going to get some live performance. It's going to be awesome.
Excellent.
Can't wait.
Singing songs about the weather, but just how much I love her. Rhymey lyrics don't mean anything. The kind of poet that would drink her, a story with no future. The kind of man that'll make the telephone ring when you need